All right, so we are taking a look at dynamic drug delivery, and I'm joined by xsangyhix. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Recovering from the insanity that was the jam and work. And I see that something got messed up again, but that's fine. Uh,
Yeah, it seems like if I do that, it works. So we'll work around it. It's fine. Um, so, can you talk a little bit about your background in game development and your role on this project?
okay. My background in game development is I've loved games for most of my life. I have been trying to make games for also many years already. I've never did it professionally, nor did I sell, nor have I sold any game. I
Mm.
just make them for fun and for the self-improvement aspect to learning new things. And also I started doing game jams, I think 2 years ago, to just meet new people and maybe make games more seriously in a sense that I did start many of my projects and left them. And a game jam is this opportunity where you're incentivized to finish something almost with, you could say, no consequences, because you finish, it's done, and it's a really great experience if you had issues with getting a project to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Starting a game jam that has no obligations later on to just finish the game and it's there in whichever state it is a nice experience, and also I think an important experience. I see the UI got messed up over there, but that's okay. These are just weapon icons that you're using.
Yeah.
I could make a downloadable build, but I realized that it's a security concern if someone wants you to download their executable and run it on their computer.
So, did the oh they okay? Those green cells took so many shots. I wasn't sure if I could actually kill them.
Yeah, those static ones are spawners. Well,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
within the game, I call them infections. You
Okay.
have bacterial infections and virus infections, and the red ones are actually the patient cells, which were supposed to be a measure of a method to make the game more difficult, that you need to save a number of them or the patient will die.
Mm.
But you know how game jams go.
Right, but they're not going to hurt me if they run into me because those are.
Nothing's gonna hurt you. Nothing's really gonna hurt you. It's just a game you play for fun. You blow things up. I see that you use only one weapon though.
Oh yeah, I haven't tried the other ones yet. So, oh okay, so you can like run into stuff and it doesn't hurt you.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. So what was the idea behind that?
The idea behind the game was my fascination with the immune system, and especially how the YouTube channel Kurzgesagt is talking about it and showing how fascinating this world is. And the idea for this game was to start something that is inspired by it.
Mm-hmm.
You have viruses. If you take a close look, if a virus meets a cell, it goes into it, incubates, and then it destroys the cell and multiplies itself, which is exactly the way viruses do work in quote unquote the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Bacteria don't do it. Bacteria just multiply by themselves, but I haven't implemented bacterial multiplication here. And of course, ideas for it was to have more variety, because the beauty of our immune system is the variety of things that are here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game jam game. We have as much as we have. I still managed to have 3 kinds of viruses.
Mm-hmm.
They do differ, but only slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And also the thing that I learned when doing game jams is that I'm making the game for someone to have fun with. So I kind of managed to move away from the initial approach that I think many of us have. Oh, I'm gonna make a hard level that is difficult to master because this is gonna be something tricky because I like changing things, to hey, let's make something that someone will have a blast to play, because A, it just plays better and rates better, but B, it's an important skill if you dive into the world, like the area of entertainment, and games are entertainment, that these are as a base meant to entertain. And it's a concept that's, I think, important to grasp, because then you put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like you look from a perspective for someone else, and that's just a good skill to have, to be able to go there, to do it, and to make something that someone else will enjoy.
There is a great XKCD comic. Well, there are many great XKCD comics.
What is that?
In particular, I'm going to see if I can find it. I think it's this one. No. It's one of the early ones. Basically, it's somebody saying like, oh, there are three words in the English language that end in GRY. Angry and hungry are two of them. Can you think of the third? And it's the man with the black hat who responds like, I don't think there are any unless you count really obscure words. And the person says, it's language, get it? Because I said the English language. And then the man with the black hat cuts off his hand and says, okay, listen.
That communicate.
Yeah, he says, and the other guy just spends the rest of the comic screaming. And the man with the black hat says, listen, communicating badly and then acting smug when you're misunderstood is not cleverness. And that's kind of the way that I feel when people make these games that are like, ooh, I trolled the player. It's like, well, yeah, you're the level designer. You made a bunch of platforms in a row, and then one of them secretly isn't a platform. It's just a sprite, and you just fall through it to your death. There's no way you could know that was going to happen. Don't you feel so clever for, communicating badly and then acting smug when you're misunderstood? So I think that there's a lot of value in games that aren't just about trolling the player, because trolling the player is easy. Making a game that is difficult, but the player persists because they feel like their time and their efforts are being respected, is way, way more difficult. And it's much more important to create an experience that respects the player's time and people feel like they'll actually want to go back and replay. So
unless the whole goal of the game is to trick the player, but the rules are set plainly in the beginning, and then you really do need to put a lot of work into making a lot of very creative ways to trick the player, and that's where the fun is, the unexpectedness of what did they come up with and what have I foreseen and what not. But it needs to be communicated, and it needs to be clear, okay, this is game about me playing cat and mouse with you, and enjoy my creativity.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing that you see, like, using trickery is a common tool in game design. Like, famously, Mario 1-1 is structured so that people will try to jump over the mushroom, but then bonk their heads and then get it and realize they've just received a power-up. So it is important to keep tricking the player in mind, but I find it's far more interesting and far more valuable when you can use it as a means to quote-unquote trick the player into having an aha moment and realizing something positive about the game.
Yeah, that is art.
We've got a yeah, okay, welcome back, Space SpyDev.
Hello, SpyDev. Yeah, thank you. It's supposed to be fun. It was designed with the thought that the player should have fun in mind. There's nothing that can really harm you, and that is not a problem, because the goal is to have fun, to shoot stuff. And I put work into the particle effect so that you feel the impact of things that you do.
Yeah, and I'm playing it as though the things deal damage to me if I run into them, but I'm not. Obviously, I do appreciate the fact that you can just kind of fire your way, shoot through the level, and not have to worry. Was there ever a time that you considered making a sort of death or loss condition in the game, or was this the goal from the start?
Yes, the loss condition was planned If your patient dies, then you lose. And that would be dictated by the number of cells of like these pink patient cells that are destroyed, and maybe also counting in the background the damage that you do to the walls of the organ.
I
These
see.
kind of things. One of the organs is broken, but others work fine. I don't know why one of them is broken.
Which one's missing?
And the liver.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the original idea was to try and do as little like collateral damage as possible.
Yes, fun through chaos. It's a concept I like a lot when in games in general, fun through chaos. And the idea is you are here to cure, but you have destructive weapons and you use them to cure, but you may be the biggest danger to the patient. Then again, it would require a lot of tuning and playtesting to make the game even possible, because when you fire around everything, your fire is so deadly that you just murder those poor patient cells, and be very easy to just have no chance. And again, then having a game that is having fun and blasting everything, be deliberately made that you cannot blast almost anything without this surgical precision would be against it. So that would lead me to make modes like game modes. The like, I don't know, hardcore mode where you cannot kill things else, the fun mode. And I was planning on adding an endless mode and a speedrun mode. It was just a matter of time. I was joking today that had I had one more day, all these things would be possible. Which kind of leads me to, I don't know if we were that far in the interview, but to the importance of tools and like, I guess making components that you can then reuse. If you pay attention to what you see, what you've seen a couple of those pink cells having viruses in them.
Yes,
and that's how the viruses can multiply. And in the previous build, where the spawning of viruses was way more aggressive. Even though I destroyed the yellow spawners, which are virus infections, to get a hold of the rampant virus multiplication it took me like 10 minutes to just really methodically going from corner to corner, making sure no viruses comes like from behind of me and cleared out. It was really fun. And again, that's lacking time. I was really struggling to release the game up until the end, and I just didn't have the time to balance it so that the player can experience it again, the struggle against a horde of viruses. It was fun.
Yeah, I did see the green dot in some of the pink cells. That's why I was shooting them down, because otherwise I've been trying to like leave them alone where possible.
Yeah, that's in general the idea how the game should be played.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that like I did notice the mechanic and I was reacting to it. But yes, I'm also using the machine gun a lot just because I like the ability to adjust my rate of fire very quickly, and it's the weapon that seems to like be the most reactive when I'm using it. Oh, there we go. That was the last little virus.
Oh, yeah. The machine gun is very precise. It's the precision weapon meant for the player. I like the foam launcher, which is number 3. I think I haven't calculated it, but I think it deals the most damage and was also the most involved in designing for me, because those are particles, so I can spray a really large number of them, but then collisions with particles and then assigning some effects from them is challenging. So I need to despawn the particle and spawn like a small foam icon sticker, and the sticker has some logic applied to it that it deals damage to the target. Maybe I should have spent less time on it, but it's a really fun weapon to use. So no regrets, especially because the game at its core does what it was supposed to. It's fun to go around and shoot stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do notice that you have a volume slider that seems to react on the title screen, but unfortunately when I start the game, it seems to be like just back to the same levels.
No, it's not. It's unless there's a bug we are using Fmod, and the slider sets the bass sound level, which should be persistent throughout the.
Because I'm going to set the sound
game.
effects to 0 and the music to maximum. Or maybe not
Set
maximum.
the sound effects. No, don't set the music to maximum. It will be really loud.
Yep, I noticed. Don't worry, I had it turned down, but
sound effects are too bad. Okay, as you wish. Maybe
so
it will be distracting.
anyway, just to illustrate, like I've turned the sound effect volume off, and I can still hear it just fine. Like this seems to be the exact same sound effect volume as every other time I've launched the game. So I think there is a bug.
Sorry to hear that. This may be a bug. Playtesting kind of suffered till the end for some of the reasons that were already stated in previous interviews. Because I really overdid it this time. I was like up for 20 hours one day, 20 hours other day, doing also other work. But when I was not doing physical work on my house or like my regular work, I was sitting on a game jam, and it was definitely more than 20 hours at once, at least. So and the rest of my team, which, well, it's their time and their decision, were obviously not as involved as me, but I had this feeling that had they maybe done this and that, like a little bit more, maybe you would have done more. Then again, no one pays us. We all do it because it's fun, and we all adjust our time, and we plan our time accordingly. The funny thing is, before the game jam, I didn't know that I would have as much time, and I casually said to my friend, "Hey, do you want to make a casual attempt at Ludum Dare?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'd like." And then after 2 days, he says, "Marcin, this is not something I would consider casual." Yeah, I know, it just got out of control, because if I have the possibility, I can't stop myself from doing things right, at least right in my mind, and give it 100%.
So I didn't mean to interrupt the discussion on the weapons, but I just the reason that I was like mentioning the sound effects is because I would like to hear the background music in the game. Like it seems like a really cool music track, but it's just hard to hear over the sound of the weapon fire. So that's why I was trying to like turn the sound effect volume down to 0 so that I could more easily hear the background music. But as far as the weapons themselves are concerned, I think that the rocket launcher is very satisfying to use, but the rate of fire is so low that I don't want to just hold the button down to fire, because it's more likely to fire when I don't want it to. And the foam is definitely very effective at clearing out the viruses, but overall it doesn't feel quite as impactful as the machine gun, because of the big like spray of particles when it hits something. So I'd say that's probably why my preference is to the machine gun, if that helps explain my thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what different people prefer, because it varies from person to person. Yeah. You seem to like the precision and the precision that gives you, and I did try to make it to make the feedback of this weapon more than just a sound on hitting. The one thing that is missing is any reactions to the damage, and I hope that the explosion of the rocket launcher and the particle effect do like put it across that you are dealing damage. The foam maybe does it the least, but I don't know, the foam is my favorite weapon. Oh, you did clear the left kidney.
Yes. There we go. It's always a little bit of a trick to get the UI to show up properly.
Yeah, the art on now the right kidney. The artist had the idea to go with the Pico format, which has very low resolution. And if I had spent more time with scaling an UI, it'd be great if you could full screen it. I'm pretty confident that if I would make a downloadable version, the resolution would work nicer. It always does work better when it's just an exe. But again, security concerns. I don't want to put people in this position. If I had more time, I would make also a downloadable build, with
Yeah.
the asterisk. If you want to, you can download it and you're going to have a better experience. But I don't want to expect from people, hey, here's an exe, totally not a virus.
No, you're killing the viruses.
Yeah, there's plenty of viruses, but you'll get rid of them. Don't worry. Yeah.
I do think the initial concept is interesting. If the weapons, like the idea of like trying to deal as little collateral damage as possible, but it definitely would have ended up being a much more stressful experience because you have to be like place your shots and not just go crazy like what I'm doing.
That's why game modes would be important. I think if I were to make this or that, I should just give the play. Again, this goes to the concept of prioritizing the fun.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants it, I should just give them the possibility to, you play that mode, you play that mode, you play that mode. I was also planning to make an endless mode where the places of spawners would actually be on a timer, and you just could run around and do damage forever. And also I wanted to add a speedrun mode if someone wants to do things as fast as possible, then to make a score, which is how fast did you clear the heart, how fast did you clear the brain, how fast that, and like put a small web hosting and have high scores for each body part. Again, if I had one more day, then I would have one more day, but everyone else would also have one more day. So
right. I mean, it's a funny thing. Like, there were a few times where I was playing Cards Against Humanity with some friends, and we would always have this feeling like we pick out whatever card we're about to play, and then you draw back up because I think you're always supposed to have 7 cards in that game. And we would pick up that new card, and we'd always be like, oh, I wish I'd had this one card when I was about to play my turn. And effectively, it's the same thing as having 7 or 8 cards in your hand, and it's just that like one extra one. But what we decided was, when you decide what card you want to play, put it face down in front of you, then draw a card. And if you want to, that new card that you draw, you can swap it with the one that you picked, because just somehow psychologically that felt right. And we the number of times that we did that, it was just surprisingly often, because you just have this feeling of like, oh yeah, that was a way better than the one that I picked. There's
probably some psychology behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just think it's it comes up with the idea of like, how do you want to play, and like, what's the psychology of like having that one more day to make a change. It's like, well, if you had one more day, then you'd probably want to come up with other changes. So you can't just give people 4 days for Ludum Dare off the start.
Because then they would want to have the 5th.
Yes, exactly. So you can always hope for like one more day. But somehow knowing that you have 3 days and then suddenly finding out that you have 4 days makes a difference.
Yeah, that is true.
So anyway, oh, there we go. That was I cleared the level.
Oh, you cleared the kidney. Okay.
So which level? I think I didn't end up finishing the brain because I reset the game when I was trying to get the. There we go. Treatment successful. Press escape. And then you said the liver was broken. I don't know if I've done the intestines yet.
You did not.
Okay.
Intestines are pretty straightforward, they are intestines. And each level is shaped like an organ. I did work on that. You're in the lower intestine right now, and these are long and windy. Just don't miss anything, because then you would need to backtrack.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering what if there was an overall shape to the levels, but at the zoom scale that we're at, it's very hard to tell. All right, so I guess we've been kind of all over the place in terms of the questions I usually ask, but sometimes that's just the way it happens. So, what would you say was the most difficult problem that you encountered during the jam, and how did you end up solving it?
The most difficult problem that I've encountered during the jam was when the resolution... No, When LDTK refused to work, I wanted to add more levels, so I've switched LDTK into this very useful mode that it separates levels into different files, and in previous times it worked like a charm. I had many level objects and I could just place this in this scene and this in this scene. To my surprise, this time it was not the case. It just kept crashing, refusing, and simply not working. And I spent, I think, an hour looking, posting on Deep Night's Discord server, then my plea for help, hey, help, this is not working. And in the end, I just end up not doing it. I had to manually disable all sub-levels and put, like replace them to be in the center of the game area, so to speak, and have a copy of this same world that has all the levels in different scenes to make loading easier. And this was very stressful because I couldn't see the solution to my problem, which was it's not working. It's a very useful feature, but what do I do?
Yeah.
And the way I just, and that's also an important thing to know, have contingencies. And if you're in a game jam and you're under time stress, you need to have this feel where, when do I need to stop? When do I need to take a step back? When do I need to come up with a backup plan? Even if it's a worse plan, it's always better if it works in the end. For me, it was, okay, I'm gonna set up manually a copy of this same Word object and just disable the levels that I don't need, which was a worse solution, but because it was working, it was the better solution. Have contingencies, and I'm a perfectionist. I want everything to be in order and under control. And sometimes compromising on the perfection level for the sake of getting it done is beneficial and is helpful, because then you get this one step forward and later on you can reiterate on it when there is time for that. But sometimes there's not, and you actually gain more for doing it the working way instead of doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Even if it's painful.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, it's the distinction between working on a game jam versus a production project, as you said. Like
in production as well.
And it's true that to some extent, like, there is the quote-unquote right way of doing things and there's the fast way of doing things, and you have to make that compromise because, game must ship. And oh no, I made it to the end of the... Oh no, okay. I was worried that I was going to have to start going and backtracking, but the text just didn't appear right away.
There is a delay because I have a system to track how many targets you have to kill. Yeah. But for some reason, I ended up with negative numbers in some places. I was afraid if something goes missing. So I put on a timer, I think each second or each couple of seconds, it just gets all of the organisms, counts them, puts them again in the list, and that's why there's sometimes a delay in recognition. Go ahead, you were saying something about doing things right and doing things working right.
Yeah, just the point that you were making as well. Like you sometimes you'd like to think that in a game jam, okay, you make the quick sacrifices and sometimes it's okay, but sometimes that can backfire because you end up doing things the quick way and then something goes wrong and now you can't debug your code and it's just broken and it's a complete spaghetti mess and you don't have time to refactor or fix anything and game's broken.
Always making things the quick way will backfire even in short terms.
Yeah.
I did a couple of jumps already, and beginning jam really quickly became very slow in developing because a lot of things need to be redone, or my control for just this one big script that handled 10 things, and refactoring and changing it and adding things becomes more and more complex. So it's a balancing act. How much attention do you pay to detail and to planning? I have this great poster behind me. If I enable my camera, behind me is a great poster that says, "Weeks of coding can save hours of planning," which, it's awesome. And I did use it in work meetings when someone said, a certain thing, I just looked at him and, hey, read the poster behind me and let's think about it. And they said, okay, yeah. So again, it's a balancing act, how much you plan, how much you do things the right way, because it pays dividend all the time. And how much, when do you need to say, okay, let's stop, let's just go do it quickly, do it dirty, but do it working.
Yeah.
And balancing that pushes your progress forward. I'm still leaning towards the let's plan and do things right, because that's my nature, and both here and at work it works. And with like doing more jams and learning more tuning, the clue that I want to go to it, like what's important is to make small, manageable, digestible things. I had really many different controllers for many different things that could have been in one controller, but they weren't. And this is surprisingly helpful not only in games but in general, if you can like digest, like divide a problem into small, understandable, easy to model, easy to navigate, to describe chunks. Working with those Lego bricks is easier. And funnily enough, it's not only my observation when working on like chemical and process engineering, which is something I've been studying. Did you know that the processes that surround us are also divided into so-called base processes, which are filtration. You have a barrier which has holes of certain size and it lets small things through and big things doesn't.
Right.
That's one of the base processes. It's distillation, which is also a separation process. Distillation is just looking at a mixture of two substances. One of them boils faster, the other one boils slower. So when you boil it at the right temperature, actually it doesn't boil faster, it boils at a higher temperature.
Right.
You just separate because the less boiling one stays and the more boiling ones, like the one that boils in a lower temperature, just evaporates.
Right.
And these are these small processes which are used to produce things that we see. Because they are small and easy to model, you can then build upon it and understand more complex things or produce more complex things. Just because you have these small boxes really well defined and described and modeled, and out of them you build bigger things.
Yeah, and I like in general, if you have that time, like the poster you have, there's a slightly different phrase that I say all the time, which is "well begun is half done." Because
Well
it's
begun is half done. I don't understand.
so it's like laying a good foundation is like getting half the work done. Because if you take the time to think things through and put together like a really good code base, like you can, and sometimes, and I have to break that rule. Sometimes I try to think things through and it's like, wow, this system is getting really complicated. I kind of just have to throw myself at it, see where the mistakes come up and then fix them. Hey, I beat the level.
Fail fast.
Yeah, in some sense, yeah. So it's it's the wisdom is just knowing how to apply these different sentiments, because sometimes it's the right call to like just go quick and make the spaghetti code, and sometimes it's absolutely the wrong call. It's very hard to lay any like absolute rules of you must always do it this way, because there's almost always going to be little edge cases or exceptions when you have to like do things a little bit differently. And I think that's what separates a beginner game dev from a intermediate game dev from a like very experienced game dev, is just that sense of having a full breadth of like knowing what your tools are and the best application for each of those tools.
I think there is a rule, hard rule, that needs to be followed in order to achieve success. But it may be surprising. The rule is not do this or do that. The rule is practice. Because if you practice enough, you will find yourself in a situation where you say, oh, now I understand it. I really did need to do this quicker, and doing this slower did move me along. And the more you practice, the better you become at it. That's why I said in the previous interview that the hardest step of them all is to begin,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember having this having this thought, having this picture in my mind that making games is an art. It's one of the most difficult genres, one of the most difficult arts, or like
Art
things that you
forms?
can art forms, because it's so multi
Disciplinary?
yes, multidisciplinary, because you need this and that, and this is frightening. This is something that I couldn't draw for my life. So I was okay. I cannot draw anything. I need to wait. I can draw to do anything, and to start and to throw yourself out there, or find someone who you can do it with, which may be also a problem, because you start to depend on someone else, and you should learn a little bit of everything. But go back to the point I wanted to make.
Right.
Starting is the most difficult task, but then continuing is another one. And to get good at something, you need to rid yourself of the expectation that you will be good. You just need to do it over and over, enjoy the process, and then with time, you're going to get better and better. I certainly think that I'm better with Unity right now. I'm looking at what Unreal does in the gaming space, and I really think, okay, I should learn Unreal, but Unreal is so complicated. I already know so much about Unity. Start with Unreal is again a blockade. So if you want to get better, just practice things. If you see something interesting, try the new thing. Don't expect to be good at it from the beginning.
Oh, I would say that is a golden rule that applies to just everything. Like, don't ever assume that anyone just picks up something and is naturally good at it. Like, people say that, like, oh, talent doesn't really exist. It's really just people who are, put tons and tons of time into things. And it's like, oh, I'd push back against that. I would say that there are people who are, like, have a clear talent for things, and things, like, come naturally to them. Like, even if it's just a matter of, like, how your brain is wired, like, people learn things differently. People have, like, music never really clicked for me, but visuals and programming did. And I would say that even though, like, I'm so unusual in the way that, like, my understanding of math, like, I'd say a lot of people kind of fall on either side of, they either, like, totally get math, they're amazing at math, like, no problem, they can think and do mental math very easily, or they just completely, like, give up math as their worst subject, they hate it. And I'm, like, right there in the middle, getting, like, 80% as my average in math class. Like, I'm not amazing at it, I'm not terrible at it, but it just is like a natural demonstration of how different people pick things up differently. And I think that applies to all skills. Like, maybe you're really good at artwork and you can work towards becoming really good at artwork, but some people, it's just, like, more easily clicks in their brain, and you shouldn't resent that, and the lack of that shouldn't prevent you from spending the time to develop it if it's really important to you.
Yes, I agree with the last sentence, with the last part. The fact that you do not have a talent for something, and if someone says there's no talent, I'd reject that as hard as possible, because yes, there is talent. Yes, there are things that come easier and come harder. But what you said, the fact that you don't have talent should not discourage or, like, block you from trying it, because in the long run, I think for most things, talent is the thing that will separate the best from the very best. But a lot of, let's say, lower things, like the not world-class singing or world-class drawing, is achievable, but by just repetition and training. And then the question comes, do you enjoy it, and how much time you invest into it? Because in the end, our time is limited, and maybe I could become a semi-professional drawer if I spent, like, most of my, 2 or 3 years on that, but I'd rather work on my programming and data architecture skills, because that brings me better money and better enjoyment.
It's true. Like, I've been toying around with the idea of learning Blender forever now, and I just keep getting this feeling of, like, well, at this point in my life, like it is important to keep learning skills, but I want to think about like learning Blender would open up the opportunity for me to make 3D games, but like, should I be trying to branch out into a whole new branch of game making, or am I okay with just making 2D games? Like, there is still an astonishing variety of games that you can make in 2D, and
I'd say try it. I did try Blender, and you just need to go with learning some shortcuts.
Yeah.
I really recommend Imperhensia. The guy is awesome on YouTube.
I mean, if you have a recommendation, maybe you can
drop a Imperhensia, watch a couple of his low poly tutorials. Of course, you're not gonna become a professional. Neither did I, but it's actually, when you spend, let's say, a week on it, you can make basic stuff. If you just put your mind to it, you can achieve this amazing thing of having something, putting it into reality. I found it less difficult than I anticipated.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced myself against it, but I do see from the point you were making before about knowing that you only got so much time to dedicate towards these things, and what do you value most, what brings you the most joy as well. So
yeah,
in that sense, still though, if you don't mind, maybe could you drop a link to that particular channel in the chat, but maybe also into the resources channel on the Discord, because I'd love to take a look at it afterwards.
Certainly. This guy has taught me, not knowing me, how to use Blender in a basic way, and it did save me in a moment in my first Ludum Dare where our artist just abandoned us, and I needed to quickly add some 3D assets, and they were there and they were used. So that goes back to knowing a little bit of everything. Because the Monster Garden. In Monster Garden,
that one,
there is a food thing that you throw to the monsters, and the food model was done by me because the artist left and I needed to at least get food. It's a really funny game. It's really chaotic. It's fun through chaos. You just need to keep the monster kindergarten from collapsing, because if the monsters get hungry, they start torching the place.
Setting everything on fire?
Yes, they just set everything on fire, and you end up just throwing food at them. Prepare food, creates a food, and just throw it at the thing, and that's the only thing that keeps them calm. I tried to write AI for it, and I tried to do many things in that, and we kept cutting things. It's in the end just a simulator of how fast can you throw food at the babies. I mean, you can try it if you want. It's just a fun experience.
Well, maybe not quite, not right now, but I would happily try it on a future stream, just because I know that people are still submitting games and are looking to get them played. I'm not sure if Bad Cop is still around, but I don't want to keep them waiting. So we can definitely find another time to give Monster Garden a try.
No problem. It's gonna be 5 minutes, because that's about as much depth this game has.
Right. Okay. Still, though, I think it's a good place to wrap things up. Again, I think we always manage to have some really neat tangential conversations. But xsangyhix, thank you so much for coming on the stream and for showing off the dynamic drug delivery. Yeah, I just want to make sure if there's any wrap up thoughts about the game itself. I mean, if you are able to make a download form available, just so that the resolution issue, obviously for me, it's a priority to full screen it just so people can see it on the stream. It's not just running in a tiny window. But I don't know if that's just because I'm using Chrome or what. At least my computer hasn't crashed again since earlier, so I don't know. It's not looking good for Firefox. On the other hand, have a look at my my volume mixer. I've got apparently 3 instances of Firefox still running. I don't know what's going on here. That looks like it could be a problem just with the volume mixer, though. Yeah, there we go. If I close and reopen it, it goes back to normal. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I don't want to jinx things. Inevitably it's gonna crash in like 5 seconds. I definitely noticed there was like a few slowdowns, but seems like we're still okay. So yeah, I guess in terms of the game itself, like I think what you were talking about in terms of this just being like a casual thing, um, I think the the objective of like not having to worry about collateral damage versus having to worry about collateral damage makes these drastically different games. If you focused on a game where you have to worry about collateral damage, then the nature of the weapons has to be like incredibly precise, and you have to have like very good cooldowns for knowing when things gonna fire and knowing exactly like how big the explosion radius is and so many other things. If it's a game about speed, and just like go ahead, like fire as many bullets as you want, just get those viruses before they infect the host. And you can see something like that where maybe and there's like a health meter along the top of the screen, and the health is like slowly depleting, and then as you are defeating things, the health meter like goes down slightly more slowly. But if the infection starts spreading too rapidly, then the health meter drains more rapidly. And it's just a matter of like shoot all the bullets as fast as possible. Then that feels a little bit more along the lines of like you don't fail because you bumped into something tiny, but you fail because you didn't clear things out fast enough. I think that's a direction that is more in line with the way the game is built right now, and it adds an objective beyond just clear it out for the fun of it. So
And that's a thing I've been thinking more and more about it. I think first games that I made that doesn't really have a lose condition. It's just you do it and it's fun. And I'm partially glad that I didn't get to implement the like lose condition in it, because I think it's my subjective opinion, but I think it holds its own in terms of being a fun game, even though there's literally nothing that can go wrong for you. And it's an avenue that I may need to pursue in further games from time to time, because then you really focus just on, okay, let's make this explosion feel nice. Let's make a couple of levels that will be just different so that you can explore them. Let's make the speed timer so you can try to do it as fast as possible, but no negative reinforcement. It's interesting. It's something I encourage everyone who's making games to try. The result may surprise you.
Oh, absolutely. I just like there is there's a lot of room for games that you that don't have a lose condition. Like I've made narrative games where there is no lose condition. I've made a platformer where there is no lose condition. It's just a matter of like exploring. But the objective in exploring this game is just to like find these little puzzle pieces. So there is still an ending, but there's nothing that kills you. It's just a like happy and bright, colorful game where you go around and collect these little treasure chests. So there's an ending and there's an objective, and if you beat the game fast enough, okay, I guess it doesn't say on here, but I think if you beat the game, it's possible to beat it in under 2 minutes, and if you do, it tells you your time. But if you don't, if you take longer than that, then it just says a little like ending blurb of text. So it's kind of secretly has an objective to like measure how quickly you can beat it, but it only tells you that if you are actually like trying to speed run it, then it tells you. I think that was,
I've noticed you want to do it fast, so here's the thing you are looking for.
yes, exactly. So it was a nice balance that I was able to strike with this game of having this feeling that you could just play it for fun, play it casually, but for those people who were clearly like trying to beat it fast, then it rewarded them by telling them just how quickly they beat it. So
yeah. And another thought that came to mind in terms of not adding the timer or not adding this condition, I'm not sure if I talked about in our first conversation a while ago, but I know I did speak about it at some point. Sometimes people add things to the game just because they are in the game,
Yeah.
and they actually hurt the game because they don't contribute anything. If you have a
Yes.
game where you have stamina, but there's nothing to run away from, and it just is something to slow down because you're out of stamina, then why is it there? Or like a game where you can walk and run, but there's no benefit in walking, just press this goddamn shift key and W and you run forward. Why is walking in the game? And here, maybe it's a similar case that I skipped adding things that would hurt the game for no tangible reason, just because there is a loose condition in the game where you can shot one. What if you don't?
You know, I will actually say, for one of the examples you listed of like why is there a run button? Why can't you just always move a certain speed? That one is another one of those like player psychology things. Like if you make a game where the character just moves at a certain speed, like I'm not saying that every game needs to have a run button, but there is a funny thing about games where you start the player moving at a certain speed, and then you give them some upgrade that lets them move faster. Like it plays on like this psychological effect of like, oh great, now I can move faster, and you need to be careful with that, because I absolutely hate when games, like especially a lot of modern AAA games, will say like, oh, we have this massive skill tree, and you look at one of the first items on the skill tree is like jump. It's like, what do you mean? Why do you have such a basic ability on this skill tree? Like that should just be something I'm able to do. And you have these like either basic abilities that are just like cut out of the character controller and then added back in by a skill tree perk, or you have things that are completely inconsequential, like jump 1 pixel higher. It's like, is that going to be useful anywhere in the game that I need to like jump 1 pixel higher? Probably not. So you have these I think this is more the point that you were making, is that you end up in these situations where people are just building skill trees because they think modern games need to have skill trees, and they're not putting good thoughts into what is going to make those skill trees interesting.
Oh, in the example you gave, you said there's a massive skill tree and you can increase your jumps height by 1 pixel.
Yeah.
I think there's a very specific purpose in it. Because adding a skill, which probably is accompanied by it, and which is probably accompanied by having a satisfying cling or swing sound attached to it, it's this small boost of dopamine that you've achieved something, you've made progress in something. You can make this progress a lot of times because there are a lot of these very small points. And it's this, it's unfortunate, it's this system that it pays off to give players constant stimulation, that you've completed something, you can feel accomplished because you've accomplished something, even though, like you said, it's 1 pixel, you haven't accomplished anything. And that is a sad side of our hobby that we have, which is video games. In the end, they offer artificial completion, artificial satisfaction, artificial progress, because in 90% they don't. And it's one of the reasons I try to cut back on games, rather focus on making games, because it develops me creatively, etc. I still haven't stopped playing video games because, well, I just like playing video games. I'm just a lot more thoughtful and try to be observant of, okay, this game just feeds me with small bits of completion without doing much. It's something dangerous. I need to be watchful how much time I put in it.
But it's a fine line between like playing on people's psychology in a positive way and sometimes just mitigating the expectations that people have, because Yeah, so as Vorstchard is mentioning here, part of why games give artificial rewards are because it's up to the player to add meaning. Audience can matter a lot. I would also just think about it from the perspective of when a game doesn't have a run button, players are always going to want to feel like the player can move faster. Like you
Yeah, that I get.
there's very little you can do to combat that sensation. Like you just almost always have to add a run button to a game because no matter what speed your character is moving at, you're like unless you're Sonic the Hedgehog, you're almost always going to want to move faster than the base movement speed. So sometimes you just have to like bend over backwards to account for what I can only describe as human nature, and then
Yeah,
other times you do have to think about like we shouldn't just be playing to those base instincts, and much less we shouldn't be trying to take advantage of those base instincts. And that's a thing that mobile games do very often, and I think it's very damaging.
oh
And
yeah.
I think a lot of people fall for it and don't realize they fall for it. But I also acknowledge that like sometimes it's okay to have a bag of chips. You know, like sometimes it's okay to have junk food. Like I have Into the Breach
Oh yeah.
on my phone, which I play and I love and I feel is very fulfilling. And I also have Fire Emblem Heroes because it's the sort of like one junk foody kind of game that I felt like it was worth participating in because it still kind of tickles the strategy part of my brain, but it's not really a high investment. It's easy to like hop in, clear a couple maps, hop out in those like super short time windows you have throughout your day. So,
Exactly. That's why didn't say, hey, don't play games because they're bad. That's
right.
why I said that I'm watchful and I'm wary of, do I really want to spend time, or is it something that I overdid and I need to go and play with my dog? It's these kind of things. I know, like, this is our hobby in the end. This is, games are fun. We like games. We play games for fun. And uh, there's a saying in Polish, which I'm not sure how to say it in English, but it like directly translated, it says something like, um, things are for humans after all.
Yeah.
So even though games are what they are and they could be bad for you, I'm just very try to train myself of being conscious of what's
Yeah.
going on. But of course, there are games I play. I've played last couple of weeks Foxhole, which is basically, for me, it was driving a truck around 4 hours a day in the evening, and it was fun. It was nothing productive, but I participated in Foxhole. Cool game, by the way. Yeah, that's it. All I say, I want to everyone to take an account, like take sometimes a stop and look back at the week you had and think if you would have done it again, and if it's doing you the progress, because enjoyment and fun and spending good time is also progress.
Yeah.
It's like
Absolutely.
it's something good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to like drain all the fun from your life because fun is not productive. It's like fun is part of being alive. Like you can't exercise that from people. I just want to acknowledge the comments that Vorstchard is here. Like running also helps players skip through something they've already know the solution to. Yeah, that's very true. Speedrunning is the
Yes.
extreme example. The player knows the game inside out, so they would rather sprint, but the ways of sprinting can be done creatively. Yes, and that's especially true in games that allow for player expression. It's a little like some games, I guess, naturally support that better than others. Like it's something that we could have a whole other conversation about. But just to get back to the point that you were making, like yeah, the I think the most important. Well, I keep saying the most important, this or that, whatever. But it is important to take time in your life to do that self reflection, to think about where am I at? What am I doing? Am I just playing this mobile game because it's comfortable, or am I doing it because it's helping me ignore something stressful that I actually should be dealing with, but I'm just putting it off because I'm afraid to confront it? And this is all part of like adulthood, really, right? For like lack of a
Yeah.
better word, is like no one's at a certain age, no one is going to tell you what you have to do and how to live your life. You have to make a lot of those decisions yourself, and you have to be braced for the fact that you it's very easy to just fall into a routine and try to like keep your head down and just live life from day to day, but that ultimately might stop you from achieving the goals that you consider to be important. So yeah,
Yes.
juggling indeed.
There's a lot of unpacking what you said.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm gonna unpack it right now. But yeah, I'd say yeah.
Okay.
To sum it up, as it goes back to the example of sprinting and walking, I just reiterate it was an example of things that sometimes people put things in the game that don't contribute to the game, just make something more tedious.
Yeah, so tying everything back to that, I think that that's always something that I've agreed with fundamentally. I've always been of that opinion of like, make sure you look at every game, everything that you're adding to your game, wade through or like look through a lens of your original intention, and making sure that this new thing isn't added just because it's familiar, just because it's something people always do. Make sure it's there for a purpose, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you.
Let's wrap things up because
Yes.
we could talk for another hour. That's not the goal
Well,
here.
always enjoy the conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the stream and sharing your game. And yeah, looking forward to the next time you're back on the stream.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Have a good stream.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.